You've probably heard many times that you should castle early in every game that you play, and while it's generally speaking correct, there are 6 very common situations when you should not castle, and that is a bad mistake. In this position, Magnus Carlsen was playing black, and guess what? He castled right into checkmate in 1. And although it seems fun, he's not alone. Here's the funny thing, in this position we can see that castling kingside is actually the second most played move, and there are a lot of folks, including folks which are rated, 2800s, 2900 who played this move. Of course I feel the pain for the 23 guys who mouse slipped into queen h6 at this point. But anyway, the point is, of course, I understand that in this position that was probably a blitz game, or they pre-moved it, did not expect queen h7 to come, and yeah, that's just a subtle thing. But there is also a broader subject where the same tactical pattern works. How would you play here if you were black? It is black to play, by the way. White has just played knight to g5, hitting this pawn on f7. And of course, knowing the title of this video, you could expect that you should not castle. But without knowing this, you'd probably just castle, or at least that's what 74% of players did in this position. And that is a very bad choice, in fact, a losing error. Now, if you castle here, here's what's wrong. You should not castle when your opponent is already attacking your kingside and is already having certain pieces putting pressure down there, right? So here, white can throw the queen out there, putting more attack against this pawn on f7, as well as creating this checkmating threat, queen takes h7, and basically it's all over. I mean, you have to play h6 to prevent queen from taking here, but then knight takes f7, attacks the queen, sets up the discover check, and black is destroyed. Having said that, black's position was totally good. They just should have defended this pawn in some other way, and in this case, black could block this diagonal by going d5, and after this trade, their position is fine, nothing to worry about. Here comes the second situation when you should not castle, and guess what? In this position also a lot of players of black castled here or during one of the next moves. And black shouldn't castle because it allows the famous Greek gift sacrifice. Bishop takes h7. It seems to come from nowhere because right now white does not have any pieces like nearby this, castling area, and therefore black did not expect that white can rush into the attack. But it's just common tactics that you should be aware of. So bishop takes h7 here wins the game for white. And this position comes out of the French defense. I played this variation as white, and there were countless times when I played this exact sacrifice in this position or in a very similar position. So just beware of that, it works. Here comes knight g5 check to the king. The king has to go, white follows up with queen h5, followed by queen h7 checkmate. And black is defenseless. So if you try to provide this escape square for the king, then there is a forced sequence, queen takes f7, and then the queen goes back, and we just keep chasing the king all the way till it got checkmated. So don't castle, just beware of the Greek gift sacrifice, and don't castle if it's possible for your opponent. Here's the third situation. It is black to play, and I actually blundered myself once these tactics. It's very common for black here to castle, blundering the bishop takes h7. It's not the Greek gift sacrifice that we have seen previously because the pattern is different, although the first move is the same. Bishop takes h7 check, king takes, and it allows white to play knight g5 check to the king. And after the king moves, here obviously white can't throw the queen out there to h5, but white can take back the piece with queen takes g4. And although white don't win the game right away, there is no forced checkmate here, but white won a pawn, a pretty crucial pawn, which makes the black king position very vulnerable, and white can later play queen h5 and still develop some attack, and objectively it's already pretty bad for black. Here's the next situation when you should not castle, and it's quite a high-level thing because even tile players fell into this mistake around different openings. Quite often, white puts the bishop somewhere here or on g5 in order to pin the knight down to the queen. And after that, if white castles, quite often it suddenly backfires, because black's got an opportunity for a quick pawn attack there, and castling goes right into it. So basically black can go g5 and gain a tempo attacking this bishop, and then they keep developing this pawn storm, and white is kind of defenseless, it just goes too fast. I mean, h4 now threatens to just capture this bishop on g3. It can't run away easily. Notice that this bishop is also doing a great job, so white can't easily put the pawn forward and, retreat with the bishop to f2. Sometimes white's got the knight right here, which also blocks the pawn and can't go forward. Either way, these pawns are moving forward too fast for white to handle it. So in order to save the bishop, white will have to weaken their kingside and play h3 or h4, which makes it even easier for black now to open up the kingside. So black doesn't even have to take, they can go knight g4, and now the queen is indirectly involved into the attack. In fact, pawn takes h4 is a threat now, because the queen supports that. right? So if white trades there, this helps black to bring the queen into the attack. Now h4 is coming, attacking the bishop, h3, and it's all over. If white plays queen d2, there's also a nice tactical trick for black here. Of course, black does not want to trade queens. They want to checkmate white. So black can play knight to e3. Pretty nice tactics. And by the way, I'm not just showing you some very specific situation, right? These positions very often happen around the Italian game and whatnot. So whenever white has the bishop along this diagonal, it allows black to have this quick pawn assault. Now white can't take it because if bishop takes e3, would recapture with a check and attack of this queen, which means that white is quite defenseless here. If white doesn't take, then the knight is active, h4 is still coming, and what can white do? In one game, white played knight a4, black played h4, white took over here, black took here, queen takes e3, and now let this be a puzzle of the day. I'll actually switch the board because it is black to play. So let's play black. It is black to play win, and if you can find the winning move, please write it down in the comments below. So far we talked about rather tactical situations, but right now it's more a strategic thing. When it's an endgame, in most of the cases it does not make sense for you to castle because your king is better in the middle of the board. After queens come off the board, usually your opponent can no longer checkmate you anymore, and therefore it makes sense for you to use your king more actively, and castle just would put it to a passive square. So instead you can play king e2, and that would be the right thing to do. From here, the king controls a bunch of squares on the d-file, so if your opponent ever's got the rook down there, it's not going to be able to go inside of the white's position. If black goes bishop c5, for instance, this king would support you to go bishop e3, for instance, or knight f2, to regroup your pieces in a nice way. All in all, your king is playing an active part in an endgame, and you shouldn't put it to the corner, just like you don't want to keep any other piece in the corner of the board. You want them to be involved. Without exaggeration, a ton of games were lost when white played queen g4, attacking this pawn, and black castled, in this position or in any other similar situation. If black castles, it's a bad mistake because it allows white to play bishop h6. This is tactics that black did not expect. Now the pawn is pinned down to the king and therefore it can't capture the bishop. At the same time, white is now threatening queen takes g7 mate in 1. Therefore, black has to give up some material by going g6, and now their king is vulnerable anyway, therefore castling didn't really work, like in terms of saving your king and putting it to safety. Plus, you now lose the rook here, and white gets a winning attack and winning material advantage. You may be wondering, Igor, but what do you do then? Well, it depends on the position, of course, but anything else, just don't castle. Sometimes you can counter-attack effectively. Or if you have to settle for defense, then you can play g6 or king f8, just anything else, but don't castle. By the way, it's kind of interesting that quite often people do blunders which are common, and ways to avoid them are known, and ways to train in order to get rid of those situations are also known. It's just that people are unaware and they don't do it. But if you feel like blunders are holding you back from progressing in chess smoothly, I've got a dedicated course, Level Up Your Chess, where I summarized all my most effective training techniques, right? To avoid blunders, to play properly in opening, middle game, end game. I even recorded myself live playing games and showing you how exactly I implement this while playing, so you can just follow along and learn along the way. So if you're interested, I'll drop a link down below in the description, and I'll be happy to help if you wish so. Either way, have a great rest of the day. Take care.